Thank you for watching the Housing Oregon YouTube channel. Be sure to join our network and get involved in the work that we are doing. If you can, please like and subscribe. It helps us build this channel, which serves as a platform to communicate with our members. This video is part of our 2025 annual conference. We're looking for folks to be on the conference planning committee. Please email info@housingoregon.org.
Good morning, everyone. Glad you are here. Hopefully you are in the right space for the North-Northeast Neighborhood Housing Strategy, and you came on purpose. Yes? Awesome, awesome, awesome. Let everyone introduce themselves. I'm going to go first and then kind of do a overview of kind of the big picture. I'm Dr. Stephen Holt, and I'm the chair of the North-Northeast Housing Strategies, and have been since its inception. So since 2015 until now, I've sat in this seat. And prior to that, I was part of the forums that helped to craft the strategy. So I've been involved in this space since 2014 and predominantly driven by this dynamic. I grew up in the neighborhood we're talking about. My house was on Williams and Wygant, 4810 North Williams, which does not exist any longer. But I'll get into that in a little bit. So.
Thank you. I'm Kimberly Horner. I am the Executive Director and CEO of the Portland Community Reinvestment Initiatives. We go by the acronym PCRI. We are the largest Black-led affordable housing nonprofits in Portland, perhaps Oregon in general, and maybe even in the nation. We own and operate over 2,000 doors in Northeast Portland, which really translates to really representing about 4,000 residents. So if you think about it, it's like running a small city. I do not do that alone. I have a very brilliant and expert staff that works for the organization. I joined in 2019 when Maxine Fitzpatrick, who was the original executive director for about 28 years, stepped down and allowed me the opportunity to really step into some big high heels. Maxine was a rock star, and we always pay the due respects that she is entitled to for her years of service with this organization. So you'll see at this table in the center is my staff, and at some point, if they need to introduce themselves or provide some other additional information, they'll be happy to do so. So thank you for allowing me this opportunity and for attending our seminar today.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Leslie Goodlow. I'm the Equity and Business Operations Manager for the Portland Housing Bureau. I've been there for about 13 years, actually 13 years today. Well, thank you. After working for Multnomah County for just shy of 20 years, so long history of public service. And I have project managed the housing strategy almost since the beginning. So worked with Dr. Holt and folks in our bureau to do the forums. And we're going to talk about how all of this came about. I'll be running slides and talking about some data, and we will have some time. Let me just click through this. So this is kind of the agenda. Dr. Holt's going to open. I'm going to present some data. We probably will have some conversation in the middle. Then we're going to have a discussion about the preference policy, both the good, the bad, and the ugly of it. And then we'll have time for questions at the end. So with that being said, Dr. Holt, take it away.
Well, thank you very much. Let me do just that. I want to set the stage. I'm going to zoom out for a moment and give us a little history. For some of you, you know it. For others of you, you may not, or you've been exposed to it to some degree. Housing Oregon's conference, this concept, lifts up three very specific intentionalities around housing: repair, restore, reinvest. Well, it's interesting to repair. Repair implies that something happened, something was broken, and now we need to fix it. To reinvest means that there was once investment and that investment became divestment, or the investment left, and now we need to reinvest. And then restore is that very intentionality of trying to bring back what once was. So just for a few moments, I'm going to talk about why this is necessary, or what caused it to become necessary. The history of Oregon is thoroughly racist. If you Google white utopia, you will find the racist history of Oregon. We already know that, right? Many of us? Mm-hmm. Yes, okay. So we're aware of that. This was intentional. The intentionality that brought us into the space of having the need to reinvest, to repair, and restore was not accidental. In the 30s through the 60s, redlining and exclusionary processes and practices happened to keep people out of neighborhoods and to keep folks from having opportunities to land and grow. Urban renewal was another one of the policies and processes that was brought in, which many people call urban renewal Negro removal. Don't know if you've ever heard that. It is an intentional strategy, again, to keep people out of neighborhoods. And there was several events that happened that created displacement, from the building of I-5 to the establishment of Emmanuel Hospital, the building of the Coliseum. All of these spaces happened to level what was once a black neighborhood. Prior to being in what is Albina, the black community predominantly lived in Vanport. How many people know about Vanport? We all know about Vanport? Excellent. My mother was in 3rd grade when the flood hit. My father was in 6th grade when the flood hit. So my parents lived in Vanport. For me, this isn't conceptual or deeply removed. This is generational impact and the reality of our lived experience. Well, as a result of that, after Vanport, the black African-American community was moved into Albina. I just talked about some of the issues that happened in the Albina area and the reality of what continued to displace and dislodge. There was at one point on Williams Street alone, from Broadway to Killingsworth, 300 black-owned businesses. Our family was one of them. Rocket Station on Williams and Killingsworth. We owned the Rocket Fuel Station on Williams and Killingsworth. A way to provide for your family, a way to provide for your household. And it's gone. Last I checked, there were 3 black-owned businesses, and I don't even know if that's the case anymore. So we come to a process of the reason to reinvest, the reason to repair, the reason to restore is because of the intentionality of disrepair or divestment or stripping wealth. Generational wealth was lost, generational opportunity. All of us understand that the way you grow and position yourself for opportunity is through owning a business, owning a home, and having economic access, right? We all understand that. Well, if you remove that from a people group, then what happens? If they don't have the capacity to own businesses or own homes, then you're creating generational poverty. Wasn't accidental. In 2014, Mayor Charlie Hells and the City of Portland had made a determination to commit some property to Trader Joe's. And Trader Joe's was going to move in on on MLK and Alberta. And there was a response from the community, a passionate response from the community. Wait a minute. There were promises made to us about opportunities, economic opportunities. There were promises made to us about housing. There were promises made to us that we would have some repair, reinvestment, restoration. And as a result of that, the mayor said, you know what, this is what we're going to do. We're going to set aside some money. $20 million was the original set aside to address creating some housing, affordable housing. Well, in that process, what was determined is how they would go about doing it. And through the Portland Housing Bureau, a consultant was brought in to help them think about crafting how to respond to this process. I'll fast forward. Out of the intentionality, we created the forums, and then the then director of the Portland Housing Bureau said, we want to do this and do it differently. What we want to do, unlike what we've done historically, is we want to put some kind of guardrails in place to help us stay on point. And that was the development of the Oversight Committee. So the Oversight Committee came in to help ensure that the promises that had been made would be the promises that were kept. I was part of the forums. I was volunteering in that space, and the then director, Tracy Manning, who had asked me to only come to 3 meetings, then asked me if I'd step into the place of being the chair of the Oversight Committee. Having the history of my parents, living on Williamson Wygant, losing that house, for me, this was a passion project. How could I not? How could I say no when there's been such significant loss and such significant intentionality around the loss? Therefore, it would be the requirement in my mind was that we would have to have that much intentionality for repair. That if you're going to undo what's been done, and if we're going to do it in a way that's responsible and thoughtful, we must be intentional. And so the strategy was developed. Let me talk to you a little bit about what the strategy does. High picture, and Ms. Goodlow will go through some specifics of data. Out of the oversight strategy, one of the things we talked about was how do we ensure that the people who've been impacted, most impacted, have the best opportunity of benefiting from the opportunity of returning. And so a preference policy was developed. And the preference policy is merely that. It is a policy to give preference to people who once were geographically located in this arena, in this area. And all you need to do is prove that your parents or your guardians were once in this area and that you live in this area. And there's a system of points that's associated with it. What the preference policy does is it gives you absolute opportunity through a scoring process to be in line for units that come online. So the preference policy was put in place. The preference policy is not a right to return, even though it's called that by many. It is not a right to return. A right to return is something that is associated with a whole nother dynamic and dimension of rules and regulations and legal terminologies and that kind of thing. It is a preference that's associated with people who were displaced. The Oversight Committee also wanted to, or has the responsibility of giving oversight and accountability to both parties. We're kind of this group that's in the middle. We're in the middle. We don't work for the Portland Housing Bureau, and we don't work for the service providers. We have the responsibility of holding everybody into a space of making sure that what they say they're going to do is what they do. And how do we help support, how do we help empower that? Now, that's been an interesting space because it makes people unhappy with you. There are moments where folks who've been providers who feel like we're on the side of, and there are moments where the city feels like we're on the side of the providers. I'm on the side of the people who've been impacted. I'm on the side unapologetically of the folks who've lost opportunities. I'm on the side of those who've had to deal with the reality of displacement. I think if you're going to do work and do work effectively, it's necessary to have a group that doesn't represent one side or the other, but is committed to big picture, even when it is misinterpreted. We push partnerships that are private and nonprofit. We're committed to seeing properties built and creating opportunities. Geographical concentration, we must reinvest in the neighborhoods that have been impacted. And so, as the Oversight Committee, our focus is, again, unapologetically on helping to reinvest in the area that had divestment. We're prioritizing people over place. This is about people. It's about families. It's about individuals. And we're committed to advancing that reality and prioritizing it. And the interesting thing is that all of us who are in the space care about people. I hope. But how that care shows up can at times have its own internal conflicts. Would you agree? Yeah. So we try to work through that. One of the significant points for us was that it wasn't merely building boxes. It wasn't merely building buildings. It wasn't merely getting people who've been displaced back into buildings. It was also the opportunities associated with those buildings. It's great to get people in housing, but we need to do something to support economics if folks are going to stay in it. So we wanted to make sure that the people who were building the housing also were the folks who were impacted around economic opportunities. So the brown business owners are building houses, so that the opportunity associated from everything pertaining to carpentry, electrical, HVAC systems, and so forth were folks who looked like me and were business owners who also had been left out of opportunities. In 2015, Andrew Colas was sitting downtown at the city council, and he said these words. He said, there are 30 cranes in the air. 30 cranes in the air, and none of them are a crane of a black-owned business. And I thought then, that's a shame, and what can we do about it? So part of the work of the Oversight Committee has been to do our best to create opportunities for other folks to be involved, not just in getting back into space, but the people who build the properties also building it. So as you begin thinking about this work, and as we're doing this work, it is how do we take advantage of all that this environment creates? Do you know that the welfare of the city is connected to diversity? That was a great response. I'll try it again. Do you know that the welfare of the city is connected to diversity? Diverse communities do better than homogeneous communities. The world is diverse. The world is made up. I know that this isn't popular terminology in the current political climate, but I think I said that sometimes you say things that make people unhappy or make people a little uncomfortable. A diverse community is a robust community because we learn from and thrive from and are enhanced by one another. And your enthusiasm is overwhelming. I know I can come across intense. I don't mean to be intense, other than for me, again, this is passion. This has been 11 years of investment. I feel like there's a great responsibility to the generation of folks who fought in front of me and didn't have the opportunity to be a voice for the voiceless. Diversity is a significant necessity, and that's part of the effort that we're trying to create. I'll say this and then pass it on. One of the conversations I had with Mayor Hales, one of the conversations I had with Mayor Wheeler, and I haven't had the opportunity to sit down with our current mayor. One of the conversations I had was, there's a community of people who don't know the history of the city, who now live in neighborhoods that we once occupied. There's a community of people who don't understand the value of this investment and don't understand the significance of this priority because, again, they're removed. They're 5, 7, 9 years residents. It would be, in my mind, a great idea to create a forum, to create a space that opens ongoing dialogue for relationship development. Now, I'm a little old school, unapologetic on this. I'll hit 60 in just a few days. When I grew up in the neighborhood, everybody knew you. And everybody could correct you. And by the time you got home, your mama and daddy knew. We didn't have Twitter. We didn't have text messaging. We had that old school system called relationship. It's one of the major missing pieces. We're building buildings. We're excited about it. Spots are going up. We've been able to enhance and support and make sure that folks are, and companies and organizations like PCRI are getting opportunities, step into spaces they historically weren't in. Oversight Committee's been invested in that because it's necessary and important. At the same time, though, community isn't being built. How do we do that? How do we work at building community? I don't have simple answers for that one, but I know it's necessary. Beatrice Morrow, Charlotte B. Rutherford, Dr. Del Milner, Garlington Place, Magnolia 2, King & Parks, Renaissance Commons, Songbird, Albina 1, M. Carter Commons, Strong Family Site, Williams and Russell Project, and now the Paramount. All products that have come through this work. I'm grateful to be doing the work we're doing. I'm excited about it. I'm just as passionate today as I was several years ago. Big picture, the why. The why, because something intentionally went wrong. And we therefore got to do something intentionally right. Does it all go smooth? Not at all. Is it all easy? Not at all. But is it worth it? It is for the family's benefit. It's good luck.
I hate to follow him. Just so you all know, so Dr. Holt and I, we've known each other since we were 14 years old. We attended Grant High School, go Generals. This slide is our current oversight committee members, and we have Ramon in the room. Ramon, if you want to raise your hand, he's one of our oversight committee members. My family was one of the families that got displaced. We moved 11 times between 1971 and 1988 when my mother was finally able to buy a house. 11 times. Changed elementary schools. I was fortunate enough to stay at Fernwood Middle School, even though we moved twice while I was in middle school, and then was able to go to Grant High School after my mother had to fight with the school board because they said if I attended Grant, because I was in Jefferson's district, that there would be a racial imbalance in 1979. And her response was, well, she's half black and half white, it'll even out, let her in. And so shortly after that, I got a welcome to Grant High School letter. And my brother and sister were able to attend without any issues. So a long-time Portland resident, wasn't born here, but I've lived here since 1971. And so I understand displacement from a personal standpoint and how difficult it is for kids to change schools and what stable housing can do for a family. So the North-Northeast housing strategy has 4 goals. Retention of current homeowners, creating new homeowners, creating new rental units, and land banking. And then, of course, as Dr. Holt mentioned, the preference policy was one of the policy goals that people that attended the forums was like, we want first crack at whatever gets built. Absolutely. That came from the people. It did not come from the city. And so we worked for, I think, about 13 months with fair housing attorneys. We consulted with HUD. We had folks from the community, our provider community, to help us come up with a system that provides preference to people who have a geographic connection to the district. So what started out as $20 million at the end of 2024 was $112 million that has gone into the housing strategy. By the time we're done with all of the development, it'll be approximately $135 million of TIF plus another 10 to actually probably closer to 30 million of Metro housing bond, general fund, construction excise tax, and some other funding that we've used for home ownership. But this shows how we have spent the money through December of '24. These are all the buildings that we have created or are under construction in for the housing strategy. And the squares, the dark squares are ones that are under construction. The circles, the dark circles are open projects. The orange circles, I think they're orange on there, are open home ownership. And then the orange squares are home ownership in the pipeline. So you can see we have projects across the interstate urban renewal area. So the first goal, preventing displacement. When we first started in 2015, we wanted to serve 80 households with home repair loans, and 160 households with home repair grants. To date, we've served 180 households with home repair loans, well, again, through December 24, and then 1,109 families with home repair grants. Those grants help keep seniors and low-income folks in their homes, and particularly providing ADA repairs and things to keep seniors and allow them to age in place. Oh, one more thing. So the Oversight Committee, one of the things that they suggested, and T. Allen Bethel, who was on our committee, who passed away a few years ago, was concerned about us adding debt to homeowners that are already struggling. And so one of the things that came out of the Oversight Committee that we then put into policy was forgiving loans, both the home repair loans and our down payment assistance loans. So the home repair loans are forgiven after 15 years. And so those are zero payment, zero interest loans that you stay in your house for 15 years, it goes away. Creating new homeowners, we had an initial goal of 40 households getting down payment assistance and 32 households through development. So working with our partners, PCRI, Habitat for Humanity, some of the Proud Ground to develop homes. And to date, well, again, as of December 2024, we had 81 folks that had purchased using down payment assistance, 57 homes in development, and then 11 people who came through our home ownership counseling with our partners and were able to purchase without any subsidy. So we have, as of last week, when we had our oversight committee, we have 131 homeowners in just over 10 years. So we're very excited about that.
Yeah.
And again, the down payment assistance, right now it's $150,000. 10%, a minimum, has to go to a home improvement. So they have to do something in the home. That part is a grant. And after 15 years, 50% of that is forgiven, and then 3% per year until the total amount is forgiven. So by year 30, it's totally forgiven. And we do work with families if they have an emergency, they have some kind of crisis, if they've got things they need to do their house, that we will subordinate and allow people to take equity out if there's an emergency situation. So we work individually with homeowners. So just shows you how we have funded our preference policy home buyers, a variety of funding sources. The Northeast, that's our interstate TIF that comes to the Bureau. Prosper Portland also put money in to serve people at 80 to 120% AMI. We had 2 buyers purchase in Lentz, and I think that was through PCRI. We had short-term rental, which is citywide money. We were able to put in 14 homeowners, CET, construction excise tax. Again, that's citywide funds. And then the rest of the projects there, the Olin project, Kenton Commons 1 and 2, and Cully Place were all through Habitat for Humanity, where we worked with them on the development, and then preference policy home buyers were able to purchase those homes. This is a map of where preference policy home buyers have purchased. A majority of them were in Northeast Portland. We've had quite a few. Again, we had citywide funds, and when house prices started creeping up, that they were able to purchase in other parts of town. So the big dog on the block is creating rental homes, and what started out as 2 projects is what we initially thought we were going to be able to do with the $20 million. We now, by the time we get done, we will have 13. So we've come a long way. Through December, we had spent $47 million in TIF. with 94 million allocated from all sources and a leverage of $306 million of other funds. These are pictures of all of our buildings. I think there's one missing, maybe. Oh, Garlington Place is not on here because even though they used the preference policy, they were not funded by the city. They opted into the preference policy, so they are voluntarily using it. But you see we have beautiful buildings, great amenities across the district. And as Dr. Holt mentioned, the Paramount was just recently purchased by Albina Vision, and they will be converting that as people move out into affordable housing. It's right next door to Albina One and across the street from the Coliseum and the and the Moda Center. And I actually lived in that building. That was the first apartment I moved into because I had to get out of my mama's house because she was worried about me being on the phone too much. So they have large studios compared to, a lot of what we see nowadays. And it was a great purchase of a historical building. So you can see that we will have a total, and this does not include the Paramount, 877 units total. 739 of those are preference policy units. And then you can see the amount of investment and when they opened. So Beatrice Morrow and Charlotte Rutherford were our first two projects, PCRI and Central City Concern. And then COVID hit. And so we had 4 buildings open during COVID, and a lot of issues, a lot of struggles, a lot of difficulties for people that wanted to move into the buildings, the building owners, property managers, and then folks weren't working, they couldn't pay their rent. So those buildings, it took a long time. Renaissance Commons struggled the most because it was the largest. It's 189 units. And so anybody that runs affordable housing, that's a big building. And so you can see what we've opened since and what's scheduled to be open in the near future. So part of what we're doing at the city is really trying to figure out how to assist the buildings that we have opened for them to continue to be viable. And so, because we don't want anybody to go under. We don't want to lose any of these units because they serve a purpose for folks to be able to move back into Northeast Portland if that's what they want to do. So the last strategy 4 was land acquisition, and we originally put $3 million into purchasing some property. We bought 5020 North Interstate, which is now the Dr. Darrell Milner building. Originally, it was going to be condos for sale through Proud Ground. And then, again, our best friend, COVID, came to visit. And so their funding fell through. Nobody wanted to fund flats as condos. And so we were fortunate to be able to NOFA that out, and it was reclassified as affordable rental. And that building has been open just about a year, maybe, just about a year. Then we were also able to purchase 2 other pieces of property. So the Strong site, which was owned by the Strong family for decades, we purchased that piece, and then some from the Water Bureau, which is going to be townhomes, working with Habitat. And then Kaiser Permanente donated a piece of property, which is going to be M. Carter Commons, and it is under construction and due to be open early next year. So the preference policy, we have 2 forms. One is for rental and one is for home ownership. When we first started the preference policy, we had everybody verify their points. And it was a long process, and particularly during COVID, when we were doing this by building, it was challenging because all the places that people could get their documents, You couldn't walk in, you had to call, you could go online trying to find documents. So we had been, before COVID, we'd been sending people to the library, to the Water Bureau, to Pacific Power, to, Portland Public Schools, so they could get records to prove that they lived where they lived or that their parents lived there. When COVID hit, that wasn't possible. And so we made the decision to not have folks that were applying for rental preference have to verify anymore. So we do a random selection. But for home ownership, we still do verification points. And so in 2024, we opened a round of home ownership. We had over 1,000 people apply. We had about 400 people, just over 400 people verify. So we've got about 600 folks that once we get through this round of folks doing their initial appointment, we may go back to those 600 people and say, hey, here's your second opportunity if you want to verify to get into the pipeline for home ownership. So we've had 850 total people verify out of about 3,000 folks that have applied in total. So the first time we ran a home ownership round, we got about 1,000, I think it was 1,011 people for 65 spots. And then in 2019, we ran another one, we got just about 1,000 people. And then again in 2024, so about 3,000 people and just under 1,000 have verified. And for rental applicants, we have had over 7,000 people apply to get onto the rental list. Right now, as you can see, 0-point households make up most of that. So 2,800 people are on the list that have 0 points because the list is open to anyone. You don't have to live in the district. That's one of the reasons why the preference policy has withstood, if that's the correct terminology, HUD scrutiny, because it's based on geography, it's not based on race, and anyone can apply. Just if you have 0 points, the likelihood of you getting a unit is probably small, but anyone can apply, and you can see the numbers. One of the largest issues that we're facing right now is affordability. And when we started this in 2014, 60% income for Portland was just about a little over $60,000. Right now, it's, oh no, that's the 100%, sorry. The 60% is the gray line, that's in the middle. And you can see that it was below 40, now it's over 60. That was as of 2023. We don't have the latest numbers. And so African-American households, the median income in 2014 was about $25,000. And right now it's about 57. And when you look at the difference between 100% and 60% for Black families, you can see there's a significant gap. And so that second chart shows 30% of your income for African-American households. That's the blue chart, the blue bars. And the gray is how rent burdened folks are for a 2-bedroom unit. And then the 60%, that orange line, shows what the rent is for a household size of 3. And so we're continuing to see, and this is not just for African-American families, but for these particular units where the focus has been on Black and brown folks that got displaced out of Northeast Portland, that we have a significant mismatch between a 60% rent and the income available for folks that score the highest points. And so we have been struggling with this at the city. We've brought it up to city council. We've brought it up with the mayor. Our partners, PCRI, REACH, IHI, they've all brought it up that we've got to do something to fix this.
Absolutely.
So this is a slide out of the State of Housing Report for 2024, and this shows neighborhoods where folks can live. And you can see that there is only one neighborhood in the city of Portland that's affordable to Black families. Native American families have 3. I'm sorry, not 3. They've got, I'm looking at the wrong slide. So Native American's the bottom. So Native American have a few more, and you can just see that Black families have the least affordable across the city based on current income. So these remaining slides, just some of the other things that we've done to ensure that people know what we're doing. We have a newsletter that goes out once a quarter where we highlight our providers. We have a topic for each newsletter. We do e-blasts. We have about 8,000 people on our email blast list that we send information out. We publicize our partner events. Most recently, we publicized that Portland Public Schools had preschool slots available for folks looking for preschool. So we really tried to get information out to folks that are on the preference policy list with information that would be helpful for them. Just real quickly, along with the strategy, we had a lot of practice and policy things that we wanted to ensure. And so one of the things was accountability, and that's the oversight committee and who has access. So preference for community residents. Preference policy was developed, outreach and engagement, the newsletter, screening criteria, ban the box, and the fair ordinance. Single-family home retention outside the district. We have general fund and CDBG for home repair outside the URA. Single-family home retention, we started a asset preservation program to help families keep their homes in their family. So grandma, grandpa, whoever can work through this program, and they will help them do a will, a trust, whatever it is, to ensure that their house stays in the family and can be passed on. Changes to nonprofit tax exemption program. It was changed in 2015. We're working on extending the sunset date. This homeowner property tax exemption program, we are still working through that. Preventing displacement. We opened the Renter Services Office in 2017. Long-term property owners, we purchased one piece of property from the Strong Family. Minority and women subcontracting, PHB increased the goal to 30% and then 20% for all of our projects, which because of the recent EO will likely be changing. Workforce training and housing. We work with Prosper for training through Work Systems, Inc. And citywide displacement. We started a group and now it's coming back around. And then incentives and inclusionary housing. At the time that we started this, Oregon was one of only 2 states in the country that did not allow inclusionary housing, us and Texas. And so we finally passed inclusionary housing in 2017, and we've created over 1,000 units across the city. And so one of the things I want to say, and then I'm going to pass it over to Kimberly. When we started this, Tracy Manning, who was the bureau director at the time, said that we wanted this to be the impetus for us to do business differently at PHB. And I will say that we have done a Herculean job to ensure that what we do is different that we were doing, even across the city, across all of our projects, that we look at when folks are applying for a NOFA. Who are they serving now? How are they serving them? Who's their property management company? What kind of track record does that property management company have serving BIPOC folks? Including equity in the NOFAs. And we have done, as Dr. Hull said, COLAS construction. has done many, many projects. Many of the projects in the housing strategy, COLAS was awarded, but we have been able to see other organizations increase their visibility and their workforce supporting people of color and women participating in the trade. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Kimberly, and we can have a discussion about the preference policy.
Absolutely. Thank you all for being here. That was a great presentation, great updates by my two peers in this specific industry. I think now is the time to get into a little bit of what happens on the development side. So as you know, PCRI is one of the longest standing affordable housing nonprofits in Portland. We started in 1992, as I first described, and we own and operate over 2,000 doors. Our most recent developments are on Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard, where you'll see Beatrice Morrow, and you'll also see the King Plus Parks development. Those are what we consider to be low-income housing tax credit projects, and they're also preference policy buildings. Building affordable housing is not for the faint of heart. These are extremely expensive propositions. So while we get funding assistance from the City of Portland, Portland Housing Bureau, sometimes they donate the land, sometimes they'll give us pre-development loans, we also have to go out and get what we call the capital stack to make sure that these projects pencil out and we can meet the debt service payment on the buildings. That's where everything is really becoming a game changer. As Leslie indicated, COVID really hit the Black community and the Black community in Portland. Our organization, being a Black-led organization, and we're not going to apologize for being in Black spaces, which means we attract a Black clientele. We have experienced hardships coming out of COVID, as well as our residents. We are seeing some historic changes that we have not seen in the past. In 2019, King and Parks was under construction. 6 months into this, the governor realized that COVID was really a thing, and there were all sorts of edicts that came down from the federal level all the way down to the local level, which meant we had to practice social distancing. There were other instruments that came into play where people were under curfew. A lot of stuff happened. We had to have COLAS Construction guarantee that they could have a workforce that would come on site and practice social distancing while we were constructing King and Parks. We had to have them guarantee that even though the supply chain was being interrupted because of COVID, that we could still get all of the furnishings that are required to open up a development of this sort. So during this time, we saw things in a completely different lens than what we're seeing today. Now that we're slowly crawling out of COVID, we are finding other areas that we need correction with the way we're doing business in the Northeast area. And that is our residents at the 60% level can no longer afford the rent structure. That means an organization like PCRI is sitting with a lot of vacant units because people simply can't afford to be there. So working with the Portland Housing Bureau, working with the state, and a whole lot of consultants, we are trying to figure out the best remedies to fix this situation. Because we have other developments in the pipeline. We are on the Williams and Russell project where we're building 80 units of affordable housing. That too will be a preference policy building. That building is targeted to cost us $65 million to build. So we can't get these steps wrong. We've got to make sure that we are getting these low-income housing tax credit projects leased up quickly. A lot of people in the audience don't know that technical aspect of the work that we do, But if you do not get a low-income housing tax credit project, which I will refer to as a LIHTC project, built and leased up within the time frame that the investors are expecting, you get hit with penalties like downward adjusters, where on some projects, it's like a $250,000 penalty to that project. Building affordable housing for the multifamily rental, the margins are very, very thin for the nonprofit to actually succeed in this space. PCRI builds with intentionality. We build without compromise. If you're able to go and visit our properties, they are beautiful inside. But unfortunately, once properties are constructed, the operations of those properties are dependent upon people being able to pay the rent. Because we're sitting with a lot of vacancies, we're trying to analyze with the Portland Housing Bureau and others the best remedy for that. Because people that got on the preference policy waiting list, some of them weren't simply ready to move. Or if we had a household that had the need for 3-bedroom units and we only had studios available, they couldn't move in. Some people just simply weren't income qualified. You have to have an income to move into affordable housing, or you have to come with a subsidy, and the subsidies are very hard to come by. So I'm happy that we're having this conversation, and I think it's the first of many conversations about what we need to do to make sure that the families that are living in Northeast Portland still have the ability to stay, because you saw the map where, Black families historically have been displaced, and our organization is that beacon of hope for people to get to stay. We own and operate 350 single-family homes. They're beautiful little homes that were built maybe in the 1930s all the way up to the 70s. People ask me all the time, sell us that property. We want to buy that home. We want our kids to live next door to us. Those families don't look like us. Those are families that are new to the area that don't understand that we are trying to stave off gentrification for the families that were originally here, as you heard my two counterparts speak about. And so if you see a property that PCRI owns and it's a home and you're wondering why it's vacant, well, it's probably in the process of either getting deeply repaired, or we're going to pull it down and redevelop it and put new units on for home ownership. The other thing that PCRI does is when we work with the Portland Housing Bureau on getting down payment assistance for the property, and that creates a covenant where for 15 years you have to follow certain rules in terms of if you try to sell the property. We continue that theme with PCRI in that we want to make sure that at the end of the day, when we build units for home ownership, because that's the other thing we do, we don't just rent, we build home ownership units. We want to make sure that the families that were historically displaced have an opportunity to appreciate the equity in that property where they own the land and the house. And that is the difference with our organization. Sometimes we take it in the sheets where we are subsidizing that unit for someone to purchase. So please know that about our organization, how we operate differently. Right now, we are in the middle of very closely opening up permanent supportive housing. It is called Kafori Court, and we'll also do some name changing on that one a little bit to honor the attorney that recognized PCRI and helped claw in 350 properties that were on the verge of foreclosure in 1992 when families were getting cheated with bad mortgages. So Ernest Warren's name will most likely appear on that building as well. But on October 24th, we will be doing the ribbon cutting for 40 units of permanent supportive housing. And I might make the statement that ends all funding for Oregon, but Black seniors will have the potential to be the priority to move into this housing. We're working with Northwest Pilot Project and Black Community of Portland to make sure that seniors that are on the verge of homelessness have an opportunity to move into this luxury housing. The units are a larger size than most units. The property will have artwork from local artists that are very well-renowned artists from Portland. So this is not just a regular permanent supportive housing development. You would walk in and think that you're moving into market rate. So join us in the celebration of Kafori Court that opens on October 24th. The other thing that we do is we have our resident services people in the audience today. We have Megan Baker that's writing grants right and left so that we can have more funding. She's also coming from the resident services side where she is HUD certified to get you into home ownership. So she's a home ownership counselor. Should you move into foreclosure, she's got those credentials to help you walk through that process. And then we have Kennedy Ames, that if you're a senior and you're living in Northeast Portland, you heard Leslie describe the funding that's available. We are the people that implement all of this funding that the Portland Housing Bureau has available. So please see Kennedy if you are in Northeast Portland, you're a senior, and you want to stay in your home, and you have health and safety issues that need to be corrected. That's the funding source. We are the implementers on that. So I would like to leave time and space for other people
I was
to.
gonna say Kennedy, I got a neighbor that needs some.
Oh, we already got someone that needs some help. Well, this one's got kicked out by her parents for being on the phone, so we'll see what happens there. But in the meantime, I want to leave time and space for people to ask questions to all the subject experts, including my staff, any questions that you might have about preference policy and how that's working for us.
Can I say one other thing? We identified that there's an awareness that 60% is not enough. And so I have gone before City Council. I've talked to some of our current sitting councilors that we need a 40% and a 50% subsidy. We need that. Yeah, you can clap for that. That's a good thing, right? So we're advocating for it. And I would ask that those who are in the city and care, help us. Help us lobby, help us advocate for this reality. The economy is continuing to stretch, and people of color are not keeping up with the pace. So.
And the other thing that PCRI is doing is working very intentionally to try to reduce the rates by which we are charging for rents, but we have to work with our lenders in order to get the permission to do so, because we still have to pay what we call the debt service on the building. It's like a mortgage. So imagine, if you will, trying to go to your lender and say, I need to reduce something so that I can pay my mortgage payment. We are trying to reduce the rates for the 60% units so people can afford to move into them. So again, our organization is probably going to take it in the sheets on this, but we're committed to keeping people in the community, and that's the difference between a nonprofit developer and a for-profit developer.
Yeah, thank you.
So I just wanted to highlight that this picture is of our very first groundbreaking of the Beatrice Morrow. It was on property that was formerly called the Grant Warehouse on MLK, and that is Maxine in the leather skirt and the blazer with heels on doing a groundbreaking. So if you didn't know Maxine, don't know Maxine, this is just indicative of who she is, and that's Dan Saltzman and Ted Wheeler, and I can't tell who that other person is, but Andrew Colas on the end. So That was one of their first big projects. Questions? Anybody have any questions that they'd like to ask any of us?
Yes.
Hello, Dr. Holt. Good to see you again.
Hey.
Todd Struble, I work at Apollo. One of your graphs showed a lot of homeowners or units in East Portland. And I was going to ask, what is your advice for community groups that are trying to fight displacement as new TIF districts start popping up in East Portland?
Reiterate. Thank you.
Yes, sir. So the question is, what are the suggestions for trying to prevent displacement as the new TIF districts are coming online? So I'm currently working on Cully. I'm the PHB representative on the Cully district, and that's top of mind for them. I know that the other staff that are working with the East districts, that's the first thing we're concerned with. So as we are creating these first 5-year action plans, it's how do we prevent folks that are currently living there from getting displaced? So we're really looking at home repair programs, because that's how homeowners are going to get to stay in their homes. Can we, develop a preference for folks in those districts that's based on that geography to keep people from being displaced or allow people to stay and to have preference for anything that gets built? So I think those are the two biggest things that we're looking at right now. But really, home retention. The other thing that has come up in Cully is a rental repair program, which we don't currently have, but we could develop. And John Trin, who's the manager for our neighborhood housing program, I'm putting work on his plate. But I'm sure that is going to be one of the things that we look at for this first 5 years for all the districts, is a program where we help anyone, not just affordable rental, keep units in a state that folks can stay there, and then require some level of affordability for some percentage of time, which we still have to figure out because we don't have a program yet. But I think those are the home retention for homeowners and a rental retention for people that are living in units that need repair.
And Todd, you probably already have this, but I'd say to everyone else, needs assessments. So how do we assess what those specific needs are, and then begin to develop the strategy around what those needs are? Because it may be a little unique based on where people are geographically. And so I think that's part of the work.
Having a background in redevelopment, I worked in city government in California. Redevelopment was our specialty. When we created redevelopment project areas, we made sure that there was information in the documents that stated we would not displace residential neighborhoods or people. So making sure that the documents speak to that, because I think that that's part of the problem that happened here in Oregon. Not every redevelopment agency operates the same way, so making sure of that. And then the other thing that you can do is ask for a larger percent of the tax increment that comes out of that go toward affordable housing. So that way you can reinvest back into the community with those tax increment dollars.
Great question. Thanks, Dan.
Well, and I'll just add to that, because Portland Housing Bureau will be leading the assessment of whether the set-aside, which is currently 45%, whether that should be increased. We have to have a report to council by next year. And so if you live in any of those districts or you want to weigh in, we will be sending out information within the next couple months, asking for the public to give us feedback on whether the set-aside should be 50%. 55%, whether it should be 60% for us and 40% for Prosper. And so that's one of our goals that the new city council has said, hey, we want to know, we want you to do a study, we want you to assess what the set-aside should be, because currently PHB gets 45% and Prosper gets 65% of the TIF, the tax increment financing in any district.
Next question. Yes.
I was just curious, I know that when we talked earlier about like there being at one point, businesses, I have it in my notes and I can't.
Oh, 300 businesses?
300 and now
Mhm.
two is PCRI, and this may be something that you did talk about in this conversation,
So the question is PCRI looking at acquiring additional properties to help support the commercial industry? Because the statistics show that out of the 300 commercial businesses, we're down to just a very few. And the answer to that is yes, we are. In fact, we are not just a residential developer. We have commercial properties that are located on Mississippi and Alberta. Those are two of the most active retail corridors that you could want to be on. We try to keep our rents at a very reduced rate so that commercial businesses that are communities of color can come in and have a place to operate and run their businesses in very vibrant areas. We also have property on Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. So thank you for that question. The Williams and Russell project, which we are a developer on as well, there will be a business hub. We used to call it a black business hub. Now I know the Williams and Russell CDC will get mad at me if I say it, but if I'm the one that ends all funding that comes to Oregon, I apologize in advance, but we can't hold back these conversations. They're building a business hub so that they can make sure that there is an opportunity for commercial activity to reoccur on that space where there was historic displacement.
And so I'll just add one more piece in Albina Vision Trust and the 1803 Fund, that their goal is to invest in Lower Albina and create spaces for Black and brown businesses to regenerate and to provide generational wealth. So it's a combination of retail and residential that will be going as part of that plan.
Great question.
Just to follow up on that, there's so much going on, the community does so much, but it also seems like with more Black and brown people being able to come back into the neighborhood, what would be beneficial is like some engagement with businesses that are in North and Northeast, that aren't Black and brown. I'm sure some of us who are Black and brown have been in those businesses.
Yeah.
And they aren't aware of the history, and some of us have maybe been treated in different ways where they think that they maybe own spaces.
So I'll jump in real quick, and then I'll let Ms. Kimberly go. One of the things the Oversight Committee has said from the beginning is re-engagement. I'm sorry, the question was about businesses that are currently in the neighborhoods or near our buildings. Have we had any engagement with them? And one of the most important things that we hear from residents is they come back, but it's not the same. We know it's not the same. And how do we engage a community to understand what was there before you got there? People coming back expecting to have something similar. Their barbershop may still be there, their church may still be there, their kids may go to King or Humboldt or Tubman, but the rest of it is not the same. They can't afford to shop at New Seasons or Whole Foods or whatever it is. And so how do we build that community? And we're still trying to figure out how to do that. I know Kimberly's been working on it at PCRI. The biggest issue is around parking. You know, the zoning in the city doesn't require parking. And as we build buildings with 60, 70, 80 units, and we know most people with kids, which most of these are family-sized units, they're gonna have a car. Regardless of whether we hope people are gonna take the bus, or we hope people are gonna take the train, we hope people are gonna ride a bike. I'm not taking my baby to daycare on the back of a bike, just not me. And so that causes friction with homeowners because now there's no parking on the street. And so how do we get in front of that? And as we are meeting with our development teams, new developers, we had an oversight committee meeting last week, and talking to them about, okay, have you taught, you know, we've got the Strong site, it's right across the street from the state building. Have you talked to them at all about, can we do a permit so folks could park in that parking lot that's vacant from 5 o'clock on Friday, overnight, and then on the weekend, so the residents at Strong Site have someplace to park and they're not clogging up the neighborhood. We've talked to the folks from M. Carter Commons. Can we get a deal with Kaiser? They donated the land. Can we get a deal for people to be able to park? Because even though seniors are going into that building, I qualify as a senior, over 55, and I just turned 60 2 weeks ago, and I have a car. So, just because, okay, really? Yes, you did. The assumption is because it's on the max line that folks aren't gonna have cars. And we know people have not gotten to that place of not having a car. So that, of folks with cars, no place to park at the Paramount. I lived there, and I would race home on a Blazer game night so I could park before all the Blazer game people got there. And sometimes I had to park like 8 blocks away because I didn't make it home before the Blazer game parking. And so we've got this issue where the assumption is folks don't have cars, and we know that that's creating friction in neighborhoods. So I'll let Ms. Kimberly jump in.
Yeah, I'll say that when I got here in 2019, that was one of the first conversations that I had with the city of Portland, that really discrimination and what it really looks like is when you tell lower income people and people of color that they don't need cars, that's the thought of that is we are locking you into this very small geographical area where you're going to eat, work, shop, and play. Well, some families can do some of that, but other families need an opportunity to get to well-paying jobs, and therefore they need cars. It is a notion, where I come from, if you're on a bicycle, you're exercising. It's a
Right.
very privileged thing to be on a bicycle, and most of our folks don't have that opportunity. So, just know that the newer developments that we go into, we are really looking at busting that down and saying, we have to have parking. People need cars. Or we need to expand our footprint into other areas like Beaverton and other areas where people can be closer to well-paying jobs.
Yeah. Excellent. The intent was initially, Ms. Goodlow mentioned about engagement. I mentioned it when I talked about the conversation with Mayor Hales, conversation with Mayor Wheeler. For me, this has always been at least a 3-pronged strategy. It's not just housing, it's also economic opportunity and development, and then it's education. We need to look at all of 3 of those if we're going to create community wellness and health. One of the challenges that exists when it comes to engagement with property owners and or business owners, they don't have to. There is a privilege of choice and selection. So we have been working at what strategies can be put in place to help people not only understand the history, but also one of our missing elements, have a little human dignity, value, concern for and appreciating those who are now customers who are in their space, and how do we treat the customer and how do we interact. So it's an ongoing work, it's ongoing strategy, it's a great question, and it's going to be an ongoing problem without us being able to establish a path.
And I do want to say that the other thing that we're doing is we're working with the Soul District and the Black Business Association on some strategies for Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard in specific. Again, when I arrived here, I said that the traffic needs to be calmed. There needs to be designated areas where you're breaking up that corridor into segments, where one should be arts and entertainment, maybe the middle of the corridor of Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard should be like a food hub, and maybe another corridor where it is more tech businesses. So and then having wayfinding signs and bridges where people can cross over the street instead of doing this leapfrog thing, trying to avoid getting hit by cars.
Well, that was
So,
intentional.
yeah.
That was done in the 80s.
Yep, and so we
Show
need to
business.
do what I call a charrette, where you work with planners, architects, and other people in city government to study it and figure out what works best to make sure that people are having a holistic approach to the lifestyle on the boulevard.
One more. We've got time for, I think, one more.
I was gonna ask, so with the higher density of low-income housing due to economic opportunities, how are we exploring, not reconcentrating property?
Beautiful question.
So the question is, how are we looking at concentrating poverty? And not concentrating poverty. My brain was going faster than my mouth. Unfortunately, that happens sometimes when you get old. So one of the things that as we have done this, is looking at where projects apply. When we do a NOFA, Notice of Funding Availability, that we don't want project on project on project on project. And on MLK, we have a lot of affordable housing. It's spread out, but between the Popeyes with the car wash and up to maybe Alberta, there are, I think, 6 affordable housing projects. A couple of them are in the housing strategy, a couple of them were before the housing strategy. And then if you go up farther, we've got King Parks, we've got some other projects. Same thing on Williams, same thing on Interstate. Because the way the district is configured, you have to, that's where things go, because that's where you've got the money and where the land is available. One of the, when we built Renaissance Commons, again, it's 189 units across from another affordable housing building. And we had someone apply to build 300 units across the street. And so as we were looking at that project, and we were like, we can't do it. That's too much in a small area. It's too much concentration. And so we ended up not funding the project, not because it wasn't a great project, but just because where it was going to be and the impact on that neighborhood, on that corridor right there at Interstate and Argyle, right where folks are getting on the freeway and the Max and all of that in Kenton. And so at the housing, we do look at that. Sometimes we don't have a whole lot of choice, but we are very concerned. And John Washington, who sits on our oversight committee, has brought it up many, many times about how much affordable housing we've put on MLK, how much we've put on Williams, how much we've put on Vancouver. But, that's where the money is, so.
Our strategy is to continue with Pathway 1000, which was designed by Maxine Fitzpatrick and some other leaders in the community, where we're building 1,000 units in a 10-year time span. Our goal is to move people out of rental and into home ownership. So the solution to not having concentrated poverty is making sure that you're building enough home ownership units, which, by the way, cost less to build than it does to build affordable housing rental. So if you're looking at, when I tell you it's $65 million to build 80 units at Williams or Russell, if you back into what that number is, that's at least $450,000 to $500,000 a unit. That's a lot. You can build a single-family home at that price point. So it's working with our teams of people that get your mortgage ready to move into home ownership, and working with Proud Ground. You want to raise your hand, Don? Meriwether? And getting yourself into home ownership. That's how you get out of that poverty. Multi-rental is a temporary stopgap.
I'll say this, it's a collaborative strategy. It's going to require all that has been articulated, and hopefully a communicated and cohesive vision that sees affordable housing that's rental as a pathway to get people into home ownership. Along with that has to be an economic strategy that's helping these families grow their wealth, grow their income. So that if you think about the dynamic of our city and the fact that, I'll go back to where I started, the fact that in Portland, not unlike other cities, but very specifically in Portland, this has been a geographical kind of dynamic of concentration where folks were allowed to be. We're shifting narrative, we're changing culture. That doesn't just happen easily, and it's going to require some courageous activity and some bold and uncomfortable conversations in order for us to get there. But it's a collaborative. If we're going to make it, it's going to be all of us together that makes it happen. So thanks so much for today. Our time is gone. It's 11:49. We can hang out. We've got nowhere to go. Well, some of us. Thank you for your time.